Welcome into this episode of Pawd Slama Jama. We're going to have a bit of a brief, short episode focusing specifically on the Houston Cougars men's basketball team here today. Joining me, as always, Dayon Dunlap. Dayon, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Excited to not see the men's trip, but kind of follow the men's trip as they get ready to travel overseas.
Yeah, a bit of not necessarily uncharted territories, but certainly a unique circumstance. Obviously, once every 4 years, basketball teams across the country are eligible to be able to make foreign trips, and the Houston Cougars are going to be taking advantage of that this offseason as they are just days away. On Friday, they head out towards Australia, and they have a long flight ahead of them. They're going to have to travel 4 hours from here to San Francisco on Friday, and then from San Francisco they have about a 15-hour to 16-hour flight going straight to Australia. So that's going to be a long journey for them. But before we get into it, obviously we're going to talk about not specifics, but just overall about the trip, the benefits that it's going to pose for this Houston Cougars team. That, like I said, not every individual team gets a chance to be able to participate in it. Kelvin Sampson talked to reporters on Wednesday, July 26th, to be specific, after they had their practice. By the way, day on their practice, if they just threw you into this practice and they didn't tell you the time or date, you would not know that it was in the middle of the off season. The intensity that Kelvin Sampson brought for that practice, it like if you were put right in the middle of a regular season practice, which, one of the highlights, one of the reasons why Kelvin Sampson has been able to achieve the success he has over the course of his coaching career. But let's get into it, Dan. What are the benefits of being able to travel a trip like this? Obviously, camaraderie is the biggest one, but even for having the unique experience, they're going to play 4 games, one against the national team in Australia, which is those are going to be tough challenges. It's not going to be, for the lack of a better phrase, an easy schedule overseas.
I think the obvious benefit of it, like you just said, is building that early chemistry, especially when you have a lot of new faces like they have this year that they're integrating into the team. And so, off top, number one, it starts with chemistry. Then, number two, experience. Some of the young guys get experience. Then the team gets experience with playing with each other and the different roles. So it's going to be new team, new roles. And so, I think those, excuse me, are a few benefits. But then, playing against competition. I mean, you're playing against adults over there. There aren't college kids. You're playing against adults, and so it's an early test for you to kind of get a measurement on where you are at this time, and it's a good coaching tool for the coaches to be able to see, to be able to properly prepare as they continue to get ready for the basketball season. So I think it's a great opportunity to be able to travel and let them all spend time with one another. I think that's one of the huge things, spending time with one another away from campus, away from the gym. I think that will really, really help the chemistry of this team.
Absolutely, and we mentioned it. One every 4 years, Juwan Roberts is kind of a bit of an interesting spot because he was on the original trip that he was not the original trip, the first trip they had 4 years ago, uh, ahead of the 2019-20 season when Houston traveled to Europe, to Italy, and now he's going to be a part of this trip as well. So unique circumstances for him. But specifically talking on Juwan Roberts, obviously he was one of the 5 starters for Houston last season when they made their Sweet 16 run throughout the course of the season, and played at the 5 for much of the stretches during the season because of Jarvis Walker being able to be that stretch four for Houston. Well, heading into this season, it seems like he's going to be transitioning over to play much more of the 4, and potentially have bigger big men playing at the 5. Here's what Juwan Roberts had to say a little bit about that transition. Not too much of a transition. Here's what he had to say, switching from the 5 to the 4 and playing more potentially. Will be playing at the 5 or 4.
It really don't matter, to be honest. 4 or 5, I just gotta play my role. And just because I'm at the 4 now, I'm not trying to get out of my comfort zone and do some crazy that I haven't been doing. So just rebounding, defending, blocking shots. I'm gonna do the same thing as I am at the 5, but just trying to improve my outside game more. Spread the floor and try to play through me a lot more.
Nothing too crazy right there that Robert said. He's still going to be obviously looking to emphasize rebounding is going to be and defense is going to be something that Kelvin Sampson demands. But a little bit of an interesting position there, of course. He said looking to be much more of an option on offense and specifically being able to stretch out a little bit more. Dayon, you know that Juwan Roberts has been working on his jumpers for years now, heading into what will now be his fifth year, fourth year, 20 and since 2019-20 season when he was a redshirt. So he's been around a while, consistently been working on his game. But how do you potentially see Juwan Roberts getting more minutes at the four than he did certainly last season?
I think it's a natural fit, his natural position. And like he said, and like you just said, he's been working, putting in countless of hours working on that jump shot. He just hasn't brought it to the game yet. So I expect this season for him to show that development and show, just like Fabian did in his last season with Houston, show that he's been working on his jump shot and be able to spread the floor and knock down some mid-range jump shots where there's elbow, 15 foot, 17 foot, then potentially maybe shooting some 3 pointers. I can see him in the corner and shooting some threes from the corner. I don't know if he'll go as far as like Fabian shooting that trailer top of the key three, and which that's a tougher three to make. But I would love to see him continue to develop and expand his game, and I think that's what he will do more. And not only that, I think they will feature him in the post even more as well this year. I think he showed a tremendous job last year that he could be a go-to guy in the post. So I think this year he will get even more featured on the block and be able to show how he's developed as a post player as well. But defensively with him and JVA, I think that's going to be a sight to see defensively with those two, how the activity, the energy, everything that they're going to bring to hold down the back end of that Houston defense.
Yeah, in that clip there from Juwan Roberts, you could hear Kellen Sampson in the background. He was counting down jumpers with the remaining forwards, so kind of taking a peek behind the curtain. The last season specifically, Roberts and Jarvis Walker would spend time with Kellen Sampson after I'm talking each and every single practice, and they would go around the world at each different spots, practicing working on their jumpers from mid-range all the way outside to the three-point shots for each player. Now, I mentioned Kellen Sampson that you were able to hear in the background of that audio because he is known for working with the forwards with Houston, and Juwan Roberts obviously among them, but there were three other players that were joining Roberts after their practice that they allowed me to see on Wednesday, July 26th, and those three players were Ramon Walker, Terrence Arsenault, and JoJo Tugler. JoJo Tugler, of course, a freshman. It's going to be interesting to see how he kind of gets into the fold and how he's able to carve a niche or role for himself heading into the season. Obviously, it's going to be a very valuable experience for him being able to get 4 games under his belt before the season even starts. Now, something that was notable that head coach Kelvin Sampson told reporters after the practice is among the freshmen, he said Tugler's probably the one body-wise just is more ready to be able to be an impact player from day one. Now, depending on how big that role is, that's yet to be determined. It's barely July 27th, but that's something that caught my attention about Joseph Tugler.
It did, and I think in that clip that you're referencing, he referenced not only physically, but I think skill-wise, he's probably one of the freshmen that can make an impact as well. Excuse me. And I expect of him to be able to make that impact on the basketball court with his skill set, not only with his body. I watched a few of his games in high school, but I kind of throw that out the window and just really watch his skill set and how he plays. A relentless motor to run the floor with the best of them. And of course, with Houston, he's going to become even a better rebounder and start attacking the glass, not just defensively, but offensively. But I can't wait to see his game fully and see how he's going to integrate himself in the Houston system and see his full offensive system. I think defensively he'll be able to fend. He got good height, good length. And I think with JVA potentially can get in foul trouble at times like we seen last year, and knowing that he will be playing more minutes, I think there's going to be times where J1 out of necessity will go to the 5 and JoJo will be at the 4, or it could be different scenarios like you mentioned, other players who are working out with the 4s. I think it'd be some instances where Terrence is at the 4th spot and you got 4 guards on the floor, whether it's Ramon or whomever. I think it's going to be one of the most versatile teams in regards to the different lineups that they can play and the different styles that they can play. And so I just can't wait to see how it all comes together. I'm going to be following them, of course, on that tour. I won't be able to watch the games, but I'll be kind of following the stat sheet, see who does what. But that really doesn't truly tell the full story of the game. But Unless it's streamed, I really won't be able to see it.
They might stream. I know they won't stream the game against the national team over there in Australia, but I believe they'll at the very least be able to stream a couple. Those details haven't been finalized yet, but hopefully they are able to be streamed, and that most definitely would be something that would be intriguing to watch at right now in August as we gear up. It's kind of a dead period for sports, gearing up. Not quite football season yet, but you take all content as possible. But you mentioned Ramon Walker, obviously after missing last season. It's good to see him out on the court. And of course, we know what he brings to the table just from a rebounding standpoint. He's kind of a player that embodies a Houston Cougar player, that toughness mentality. And the way he plays, every time he's going to be out on the court, he's going to be going 100 miles per hour. He's going to be giving you his 100% effort. Now, when it comes to the guards, obviously the new additions in Damian Dunn and LJ Cryer, they're going to be brought in. They're expected to be key contributors right out of the gates for Houston. So it's going to be very intriguing to see not just the freshmen, but those two players as well. They're going to be new additions trying to be able to fit into the fold. So a foreign trip like this is going to be very beneficial to them. When it comes to LJ Cryer, he spoke, or I asked him about Jamal Shead, and one of the things that stood out to me that Cryer said about Shead was, from what he had heard, it seems like Shead had grown from a leadership standpoint from a season ago. That's what Cryer said. Intriguing in that aspect too. And Jamal Shead overall, just body-wise, he seems like he's bulked up a little bit more. He certainly seems more toned up. Now, when he was asked about it after the July 26th practice, he kind of played it down. He said he hasn't really focused on trying to get more tone, but you can certainly tell that he's been hitting the gym. What can you expect of Jamal Shead? Obviously, it's entering what very well could be his final year at Houston. I believe it would be his true senior season, but with all the COVID rules, honestly, I don't know if he has an extra year of eligibility left, but obviously he already tested NBA waters. He has his sights set on bigger aspirations. What really do you feel like Shead has to put on tape in his senior season?
Consistency. I think that's really it. I think he's consistent in certain aspects of his game as far as floor generalship, the way he defends, and the way he playmates, and not turning the ball over. What I mean as far as consistent, as far as Jamal, is consistently knocking down that outside shot, not only 3 pointers, but the mid range as well. And consistently making good decisions in the realm of picking and choosing when to be a scorer and when to be a facilitator. He does a great job of that, but at times, in my opinion, he took too many shots last year instead of getting the ball to other scorers on the team who I'm sure he would probably agree are better scorers or could be better scorers than him on any given night. Because I think on any given night, he could be just as good as anyone scoring. But for Jamal, I think it's just more consistency offensively in regards to making jump shots and making good decisions in regards to picking and choosing his spots. Yeah, I mean, he's a great facilitator, great floor general. He can push the pace and control the pace of the game. Now it's just taking that next step to show that he could be an upper echelon. Because I was looking at the smaller guards who were really, really good, exceptional point guards in college last year, and none of them got drafted. And they're all around his stature. You go from Kendrick Davis to Mike Miles at TCU. Those two of the players who are two of the best small point guards in the nation last year, and they went undrafted. So watching them kind of thinking, what can Jamal do to separate himself from other small guards to ensure that he makes it to the next level? And I think that's what he can do.
Most definitely. I do want to point out a few more other things. Malik Wilson back with the team. He was practicing, obviously, on not to, I feel like I'm saying this date too much, but the Wednesday, July 26th practice that they had, Malik Wilson was back in the fold. So it's going to be interesting to see him, obviously, after not getting run a season ago, see if he's able to carve a niche in the rotation. Last note, obviously, freshman Cordell Jefferson, it appears that the plan for him as of now is for him to redshirt his true freshman season. So that's going to be something to watch for as Houston enters the 2023-24 season. They're first in the Big 12. Obviously, like I said at the top of the show, it's still July. When we're recording this, it's August, July, still very early. Just a cool opportunity for them to be able to travel overseas, even though if you see by some of the comments, players might be a little bit scared of the animals they might encounter over in Australia, but just an awesome opportunity for them. And what Calvin Sampson mentioned post practice as well is that they're going to be able to get college credit for their trip overseas, which obviously an awesome component in that aspect as well. That's going to do it for today's episode. We thank you as always for tuning in and taking the time out of your day to watch us, listen to us, and whatever type of platform you may be listening, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Spotify, Apple Podcast. We appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, we'd like to hear from you. So if you are new to the channel, first hit the subscribe button. It's the easiest way to support us, and let us know all your comments. What are you most excited for on this Australia trip? Have you guys ever been to Australia? I'm curious to see what some people comment about what might potentially be the most dangerous animal, because apparently there's a lot of things that can kill you in Australia, or spiders that are huge. We'll put a pin on it. Obviously exciting times, and Dan, like you mentioned, we'll hopefully there's a stream where we can get a little bit of a basketball fix in August, and at the very least there'll be a scrimmage this upcoming Tuesday, August 1st, for the Houston Cougars men's basketball team. As always, Dan, you get the final word.
In a segment or podcast that is, without saying go Cougs.